The Louisville Forum is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public issues group that was founded in 1984. The Forum hosts debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. Our meetings take place the second Wednesday of every month at Vincenzo's Restaurant here in downtown Louisville. For more information on the Louisville Forum, please visit our website, louisvilleforum.org. And now for our topic tonight, public school safety, concerns and solutions. There has been a recent spate of news articles about Jefferson County public schools. As a taxpayer, and some of whom, many of you are also taxpayers and may also have school-aged children, I'm sure many of us are concerned when we read about assaults on teachers inside their classrooms, understaffed classrooms, stories about teachers being locked in closets, unsafe rides on school buses. A silent majority of teachers continue to raise concerns about an inordinate amount of time spent managing bad student behavior, which is disrupting and meeting the needs of other students who are participating in the classrooms and are willing to work. Looking at the evidence, since the start of the 2015-2016 school year, 72 JCPS teachers have resigned their positions, up from 62 during the same time period, July of October of last year. However, both of those figures are down from the 92 teachers who resigned during the same period, 2013-2014. In defense of JCPS, Dr. Hargens has emphasized the district has spent $243 million over the past 3 years to increase its school-based support. Among the additions that she's bringing to the table are assistant principals at the elementary level, as well as mental health counselors and goal clarity coaches at all schools. She maintains the public is only hearing one side of the story, and that the district's big picture data shows that the majority of its 6,000 teachers feel safe and supported. Tonight, the Louisville Forum is pleased to host this timely examination on both sides of the topic, public school safety, concerns, and solutions. And now for our first speaker, Dr. Donna Hargens. Dr. Hargens is the superintendent of the Jefferson County Public Schools, having been selected for that position effective in August of 2011. Prior to her appointment, she served the Wake County Public School System in Raleigh, North Carolina for 22 years in a variety of positions that included Chief Academic Officer, Interim Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Area Superintendent, and Principal of 2 high schools. Today, she leads JCPS, which operates 150 schools with more than 101,000 students, making it the 27th largest school district in the United States. In 2014-2015, the local school district had a $1.1 billion budget and more than 18,000 employees. With a fleet of more than 1,500 vehicles, it operates one of the 10th largest transportation systems in the nation. Without further delay, please welcome our first speaker, JCPS Superintendent Dr. Donna Hargens.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Louisville Forum and the Board of Directors for inviting us to share with you about school safety in the Jefferson County Public School System. This is actually my 4th opportunity to be at the Louisville Forum, so I appreciate it. Safety is our top priority, and I appreciate this forum because it allows us to clear up misconceptions, provide context, present challenges, as we always do, and inform you about how those challenges are being addressed. Let me be clear, our schools are safe. In fact, for many of our students, school is the place they feel safe. School safety is my top priority, the safety of our students, our educators, our bus drivers, and our staff. As was said, JCPS is the 27th largest school district in the country, and our schools are routinely named some of the best schools in the state and some of the best schools in the country. We have a graduation rate that is above the national average, and our graduates are working in the White House and on the West Coast at Google, and every point in between. We have a fourth of the state's national merit scholars and boast a network of five-star schools that ensure our students are career-ready upon graduation. And our college and career readiness rate has doubled in the past years. We are a school system of over 100,000 students. That's 1/7 of all the students in Kentucky. 81% of school-age children in Louisville, Jefferson County attend JCPS. And every day we are responsible for their safety, well-being, and their education. It's a task we take seriously, and we prepare and plan for it. 93% of our teachers report they feel safe and supported in our schools, and our students overwhelmingly report feeling safe. However, one student or one teacher who doesn't feel safe is one too many. That's why we've worked with students and faculty to launch a bullying tip line this year that allows students and parents to confidentially report any issues that may be taking place in our schools. The calls are processed and immediately sent to the schools for response or to the authorities for investigation. We are continuously educating our students about their responsibility in creating a safe school environment. Those responsibilities include creating a respectful community and alerting school staff if there is an issue that needs attention. And we encourage people to call, and in particular, we have 6 area superintendents that exist to make sure that they're representing their network of schools. We know that if our children don't feel safe, they cannot learn. In JCPS, we have 6,400 teachers in 155 schools. We are constantly working with our teachers on professional development and support. We know that some of our students experience trauma or social barriers to learning in the home, and they may bring anger to them or with them to school. That's why we've engaged mental health professionals to be placed at our schools for intervention. We have a new program with LMPD where if a child in our school system witnesses trauma, the school is alerted so that we may intervene to head off potential behavioral problems while getting the child the support he or she needs. If a child exhibits violent behavior in our schools, he or she is removed from the classroom and placed in an alternative learning environment. We're currently reviewing our code of conduct to ensure it meets the needs of our staff and students. Each day, 70,000 students rely on our buses to take them to and from school. That's 140,000 transports. That's every day. So in 100 days, that's 14 million individual transports. And only 0.04% of those transports have resulted in a bus referral. We've looked at the data and behavioral challenges on our buses, and they seem to be coming out of 50 of our 956 routes. That's 5% of our routes. And when you break it down further, 125 students seem to be causing most of those problems. So we've done 2 things. We've named and claimed each of those 125 students and intervened appropriately. Secondly, Dr. Razor has been providing additional support from our schools to ride challenging routes to assist our bus drivers and to support them. As a district, we've been transparent with our parents when situations arise. That's the kind of relationship we have that we need to have between our teachers, parents, and students. They're our kids. We are a school district, and we're constantly learning through our conversations with teachers, parents, bus drivers, and the community about how we can improve each and every day. So I appreciate this community's interest in this issue, and I appreciate being a part of the dialogue because we know how precious our students are to you and to us, and how important their success is to this community. And we value the trust that is placed in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. We're going to continue on a rotational basis, a point counterpoint. And so at this point, I'd like to introduce Chuck Bird. He's a fourth grade teacher at Smyrna Elementary School, and he's a regional director for the Jefferson County Teacher Association. The JCTA was first established in 1968, and over 35 years later, it remains the recognized bargaining agent for over 6,000 certified personnel employed by Jefferson County Public Schools. Their mission statement is to serve as the active voice of the membership, promote quality and equity in public schools, expand and protect the rights and interests of members of Jefferson County Teachers Association, and advocate human, civil, and economic rights for all. Please welcome your next speaker, Chuck Bird, board member for Jefferson County Teachers Association.
Thank you. I'd first like to say that what I'm going to say is to use in a context of helping solve the problem, not just critiquing it. Since I have the bully pulpit, I'm going to use it for a moment. I was asked, why did I specifically want to stand up here and speak, especially concerning this issue? Well, first of all, as Dale said, I'm a fourth grade teacher at Smyrna Elementary. I've taught until I drove here. I will be back teaching in about 12 hours. I am one of those that is living the dream. More specifically, why I wanted to speak here is that I'm not a Louisvillian by choice, by birth. I'm a Louisvillian by choice. I've been here since 1988. I've raised 4 children. I've bought 2 houses, been to Bellarmine to get my master's. Unless I win the lottery, I'm not going anywhere. Louisville is my home. What I see, what is happening in our schools concerns me to the point where I don't want to see Louisville become another Chicago, another Milwaukee, Philadelphia, or Baltimore. Those are, again, my personal opinions. Now, what I would like to talk about is that JCTA wants to be part of the solution, not critiquing the problem. What we are proposing, or what we're looking at, and I'm speaking also for Patia Edison, who unfortunately got a bad case of laryngitis. We're looking at 3 approaches to help the safety and discipline in our schools, which will help convert students into lifelong learners that have the potential to maximize their educational potential. First is long-term. That is where Patia comes in. She is working hard with the community, Louisville community. That's where the answer will ultimately come from. The schools can help, but it's society's problem. It is our problem. Therefore, I'm very glad to see that it isn't just JCPS, JCTA, and the Teamsters. It makes me feel good that the whole community is here tonight so we can start discussing this and finding long-term answers that we need to figure out as a society here in Louisville. We've got children that come in, as Dr. Hargan said, with post-traumatic stress disorder. The 3 approaches that we're going to look at, we want to be clear that we see it as proactive and not reactive. We need community support and funds for social, emotional, and mental support. We want to work with restorative justice. We want to work with the community on this. We would rather see funds and effort put into proactive than reactive answers, such as the $300,000, which may be needed, but is a reactive step that we see given to Louisville Metropolitan Police Department. We need parent support. If the parents don't know how to give it or are unsure, then the community needs to help as a long-term solution to help parents become better parents. As educators, these are things that we can't do or we aren't able to do. We just can't do that. We are not equipped to do so. Second, medium term with JCPS. Sadly, teachers' voices sometimes get overheard when we start talking about things like this or code of conduct. We want to be in on the ground floor, work collaboratively with JCPS to look at meaningful changes where not only the students are safe, but the teachers are also. We want JCPS to recognize the reality of what the students are coming in with, as well as that these students are taking the right to learn away from others. The fancy word for that is educational neglect. I've got a minute left, so third, as a short term, what we're doing, because unfortunately from what we're seeing is that too many adult staff are being assaulted, as well as students as well. We're working with teachers directly to let our members know what rights they have, working with JCPS if they are assaulted, as well as what rights they have as citizens in the community. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Chuck. And I hope, Patia, hope you feel better soon. Our next speaker is Dr. John Marshall. Dr. Marshall is the Chief Equity Officer for Jefferson County Public Schools. He is a native Louisvillian, a father of 3 girls, and he's active in the community and sits on several boards. I always like it when someone includes in their resume they got kids, you know, it just kind of keeps it real. We appreciate that. Dr. Marshall completed undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate work at Western Kentucky University. His research focused on teacher perception and its impact on African American males. Please welcome Dr. John Marshall.
Good afternoon. Dear members of the Louisville Forum, thank you for inviting our administration to be a part of this panel. I'm here to talk about 2 perspectives. First, I am a father and a graduate from Jefferson County Public Schools. As we speak, I have a daughter running around here somewhere in this building because she's in the Beta Club. I am very, very proud of the work that JCPS is doing, and I'm speaking as a Chief Equity Officer, but also as a parent. What that means is I'm the Chief Equity Officer, and what that means is I am tasked to talk about the elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is that for far too long, school systems across the country, including JCPS, have been disproportionately suspending students of color. What we know is that students who aren't in class are not learning, and there is no way we're going to close the achievement gap if students aren't in class. For years, the disciplinary plan and the program has been more punitive. We're looking at restorative practice. We're looking at more ways to keep our students in the classroom. If a student cannot behave, he or she is not achieving. So we want to make sure that we have students behaving and achieving, thus staying in class. That is why, as Dr. Harkins mentioned earlier, we have deployed a team of mental health professionals in our schools to help meet the needs of our students. The goal is to get to the root of the behavior and modify that behavior so that the student can successfully participate in class. We are breaking down barriers to learning. We know that many of our children experience trauma in the home. They are homeless, or they are living temporarily with families in foster care. Excuse me. Part of breaking down those barriers to learning is teaching cultural competency in our schools, which we are doing. We know that a student who's working hard and made a mistake can be completely blown off course if a principal or teacher says, "I know your parents raised you better than that." We have to work with how we address our students. We also have to make sure our students are behaving correctly. And please let me make clear, we are proactive, poised to be reactive. Dr. Razor will talk more about some of the things we have in place to address our proactive approach to student behavior, inclusion, equity, and more importantly, achievement. I hope we hear that word a lot today. Our Vision 2020 strategic plan states we shall maximize our efforts when we have excellence through equity and a safe and nurturing learning environment for all. Students, faculty, and staff are part of that. We are moving in the right direction, and I appreciate the dedication of our teachers and administrators to make sure we get this right. Our students are depending on this. Again, I close with wanting you all to understand that there are over 300 JCPS students in the Beta Club in this building right now, having a good time, safe, and enjoying their night. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. I had the pleasure of seeing the Beta Club students enjoying themselves in the hotel, riding the elevators, pushing every single button. And I think we have some other witnesses to that too. And I stand accused. I did that too when I was in Beta Club. So it all comes back around. Be careful what you sow, you shall reap it. At this point, before we shift to our next speaker, I'd like to ask two of our board members, Pam Greenwell and Tom Van Rosterstein, if they could start collecting questions from the tables. You will notice that each table is a shard of paper, a slip of paper for you to fill out your question. Please write it legibly. Try not to use a heavy marker. There are also some nice ink pens also there for you to write in your questions, and Tom and Pam will continue to collect those discreetly as we welcome our next speaker to the podium, who is Gay Adelman. Gay is the co-founder and president of a blog called Dear JCPS. This website has been created by a group of concerned stakeholders across JCPS. They wanted to provide a venue where parents and stakeholders could address the JCPS Board of Education and Administration in a constructive, organized, and timely manner. Dear JCPS is an opportunity to provide stakeholders more advance notice of items being presented, as well as more opportunity to voice their concerns publicly, as well as more opportunity to share with the members of the school board that they're able to ask questions and better represent their constituents prior to casting critical votes. Dear JCPS was started by a couple of moms whose kids went to school in the West End. They learned the hard way how to advocate for their students and for their school to which they are committed. Please welcome our next speaker, Gay Adelman, co-founder and president of Dear JCPS. Gay.
Thank you, and thank you for having me this evening. As he mentioned, my name is Gay Adelman, and I am a parent of he's now a senior at the Academy at Shawnee, and we moved to Louisville 3.5 years ago. We've lived in 8 different school districts. We've attended public and private schools. We've seen small school districts, we've seen large school districts, we've seen functional, we've seen dysfunctional. And when we first moved here, we had no preconceived notions about anything about the district, about anything about where you should or shouldn't send your kids to school. We checked out the choices catalog just like they tell you you're supposed to, and we chose the Academy at Shawnee. My son is getting his pilot's license. He has had the most phenomenal educational experience that I could have ever asked for. And it blows my mind that as I go through town and as I was meeting with realtors and dry cleaners and various neighbors, they would ask me, where are you going to send, like, it's so important, where are you going to send your son to school? I said, the Academy at Shawnee. Oh, no, you can't do that. Yeah, I can and I am. And I don't regret a minute of it. If I could somehow change community perceptions about the importance and emphasis that they put on which school their child attends and actually recognize that we are the community. We are the public in which public education applies. And wherever we send our children, if we invest as a community, we can change the outcome of not only that school, but everyone who attends that school. And when I recognized that, that's what kept me there, and that's what got me passionate about advocating for my son's school. He's fine. I don't advocate for him. I advocate for the perceptions and the lost opportunities that happen because people can't see past sending their kid to a school in the West End. We started the organization, Dear JCPS, because we recognized that stakeholder feedback was critical to changing the outcomes of these schools, and it wasn't making it all the way to the decision makers. I don't envy the task that these administrators have running a district this large, especially when there are only 7 board members making decisions that affect the outcomes of this entire district. So what we as a community are trying to do is make sure that our voices are heard, that information is shared with stakeholders before the night of the vote. We share information through emails, through our Facebook pages, not just our blog, but we have 2,600 followers on our Facebook page. We also have private groups. Again, we just started this summer, so clearly the interest that has been generated through just this short time that we've existed shows that there was a need for this kind of communication. And we speak at every single board meeting, and we make sure that our concerns are heard and teachers' concerns are heard, because There is a culture of fear in this district. Teachers are afraid of retribution. They're afraid that something could happen even if it's just a good idea. For some reason, even good ideas don't make it to the people that need to hear them. So we try to create a channel of communication that allows these good ideas to make it to the people that are making the decisions before it's too late. Because it's a lot easier to fix something before you've made a decision than it is to fix it after unintended consequence after unintended consequence after unintended consequence happens. So it's very important that we get in front of all of this. With everything that's going on in educational climate right now, between school safety and discipline issues, as well as budget cuts and the overuse of standardized testing, the overemphasis on a single test metric that actually doesn't guide instruction for our children that actually have skills such as leadership and creativity and musical talent. None of that is measured on a standardized test. So we put way too much emphasis on standardized testing. And with all of this that's coming together right now, we've created a perfect storm. And we have not only an opportunity, we have a need. It's urgent that we make decisions about where we're headed in the future, because if we don't, these decisions are going to be made for us, and we're not going to like them. So with charter schools coming in and various other threats to public education, it's critical that we do what we need to do now. And when it comes to public school safety in particular, the two areas where we focus the most are in the classroom. We actually visit with our teachers. We listen to what our teachers have to say. We are on the ground, and we hear what they are telling us. And we have some concerns about what's not making it up to decision makers. I hear the data, but I also hear reasons why that data is not correct. It doesn't reflect things because referrals are being torn up or teachers aren't supported, so therefore they don't even bother writing referrals. So the data may look great, but it's not accurate. It's misrepresented. And so we need to make sure that between classroom and the buses are a critical area too. And in fact, I just completed a training today. I'm going to be a volunteer bus monitor. As a member of the community, we are the village, and we need to take back our schools, and we need to do whatever it takes to send in those reinforcements now, because now is when it matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay. Our next presenter, it looks like we're getting a lot of good questions, so keep those questions coming. If you have a question on a sheet of paper, hold it up, and Tom or Pam will be glad to retrieve it. As our next presenter comes forward, Dr. Michael Razor was appointed Chief Operations Officer of Jefferson County Public Schools on March 12, 2012. Prior to coming to Louisville, Dr. Razor was Executive Director for Operational Excellence at the Evansville-Vanderburg School Corporation in Evansville, Indiana. He has served as a teacher, a coach, assistant principal, project manager, and deputy chief operating officer throughout his long academic career. Please welcome your next presenter, Dr. Michael Razor, Chief Operations Officer for Jefferson County Public Schools.
Good evening, and thank you for letting us come and inviting us to speak with you tonight on a very important topic. As was mentioned, I am Chief Operations Officer of Jefferson County Public Schools, and our philosophy in operations is that operations is what makes learning possible. The infrastructure that we provide and support and protect makes learning possible. And one of the hallmarks of what we do, sort of alluding to what Dr. Marshall said earlier, is we expect the best, but we're constantly preparing for the worst. Sadly, the things that I worry about in my job are things that none of us like to think about. And things that, frankly, we don't even like to talk about because they're so unconscionable that we don't want to think about it because we all have kids or know the neighbor's kid down the street, that type of thing. However, because of tragedy, we are very fortunate in the state of Kentucky. 1996 shooting at Paducah Tillman High School, and just less than 10 short years earlier than that, the tragedy of the Carrollton bus crash. Kentucky really took a hard look in both of those instances in what we were doing. And today we have some of the most robust transportation standards, if not the most robust transportation standards in the nation for school bus safety and have some of the strongest planning and programmatic training around school safety from a macro and a micro level, again, of any state in the nation. Being the largest city in that state, Jefferson County Public Schools gets to take advantage of unbelievable training. I was a history teacher and a government teacher, so I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to stuff like that. And when high-ranking Homeland Security officials and FBI officials come and personally give you training and talk with you about why they do what they do and train us, we're getting the world's best training at keeping the children of Jefferson County safe. Just in my short time being here, we've received training from LMPD, EMA, other local police departments within Jefferson County, the FBI, Secret Service, Homeland Security, EPA, Louisville Fire. Safety of students also is of such an expansive thing. We're monitoring air quality, water quality. We're looking at places where we place our crossing guards. I have got 2 teams of trained professionals whose entire jobs are keeping kids safe. So, what do? Each of our schools has a plan. That plan has to be updated on a yearly basis. It's looked over by our security officials and local law enforcement to make sure that it is a good plan and that it makes sense and that they're actually practicing then what they've planned to do. Additionally, during times when we have breaks in school, SWAT teams will come in and train inside of our buildings in case something ever was to happen, so they're familiar with the layout of our buildings and also what it would actually be like. And then similar to probably when lots of you were in school, we drill, we drill, we drill, we drill. And we stress that you have to take it seriously, that we have to take these situations seriously. And as unfortunate as the events that unfolded last year at Fern Creek High School were, we had a plan that had only been trained on, that was enacted and kept students safe, kept families informed. We don't like thinking about those kinds of things. You know, I often bring up the fact that I have a son in JCPS. When people ask me about are our buses safe or should I send my kid to school that day? You know, that's one of those things that I'm always thinking about is what are we doing to keep my kid and every kid safe? 2 things we really do. 1, we encourage people to build relationships with kids. Because so many kids just want somebody to have a relationship with them. And that could be the custodian in the building, could be somebody who works in the cafeteria line, could be their bus driver. So make it about relationships, but then also know what's going on. One qualitative, the other quantitative. We look at our numbers and we make decisions from that. As Dr. Hargens alluded to, we were hearing there were problems on buses, and we were hearing that there were problems on buses. And there are problems on some buses, and we've done some things to address that I'm sure we'll get questions about, and that other people will talk about too, that you've seen on the news and you've read about in the paper. But when we looked at the numbers, we're a little over 100 days into school. We transport 70,000 students in the morning, 70,000 students in the afternoon. 140,000 customers a day. Times 100 is 14 million. We've had just over 6,500 bus referrals, and that sounds like a lot until you divide 6,500 into 14 million, and it's 0.04%. We identified 150 students, really less than that, that had 5 or more referrals, that's a fraction of 70,000. However, what that also tells us is that's a number we can attack. We name and claim every one of those kids, and we've got a plan around them now. So I'm going to end like I started. We believe that our job in operations is to make learning possible. Safety and our security departments believe their entire job, the only reason they come to work every day, is to keep kids safe. And the way they do that is by expecting the best, but preparing for the worst. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I think Mike is the, from when I was researching this topic, I think that you're the gentleman who who gives information about snowfall. Is that correct? That's when that school's going to be closed or not. So I saved that for this part. I don't want anybody throwing projectiles up here. So I saved that to the end. But he's the guy. He's the guy. But thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Our next presenter, Tony Kahns, joined WDRB in July 2014. She covered Jefferson County Public Schools and statewide education for the Courier-Journal since arriving in Louisville in March 2007 and was the Kentucky correspondent reporter for USA Today. Before that, Tony spent 5 years covering K through 12 public education for newspapers in Alabama and Mississippi. Tony is a member of the Education Writers Association and has won numerous awards for her coverage, including a national award from EWA for a series of stories on some of Louisville's most struggling schools. In 2004, while covering a speech by U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia in Mississippi, may he rest in peace, she and a reporter from the Associated Press had their tape recorders illegally seized by a deputy U.S. Marshal. That incident won her a top Freedom Information Award from Gannett, and her recorder is now part of a First Amendment display in the museum in Washington, D.C. See, we did research on you, darling. Please welcome your next presenter, Tony Kahns.
All right. I didn't know you were going to bring up Scalia, but that's okay. Right. So, why am I here? I have covered, as they've said, I have covered Jefferson County Public Schools for almost 10 years. My son is also a JCPS student. Started in kindergarten. He is an 8th grader at Westport Middle School in the Montessori program, and we just got our acceptance letter. He is going to be in the International Baccalaureate program at Atherton High School. We're very excited about that. So I think that I bring a little bit, to the table in terms of I'm a parent, but I'm also a reporter. My son has about as big of a mouth as I do and tells me everything that goes on in his school, every little detail. And, I encourage that because I am all about transparency and honesty. And that is the reason why I became a reporter. And so when the Louisville Forum asked me to come and be a panelist at this discussion, I initially was like, I don't know about that because, I'm not really on one side or the other today. My job is to report the facts. I use the power of the state's Open Records Act to obtain data. I'm out in the schools all the time. I can honestly say I have interviewed every single person on this table multiple times. I have all their cell phone numbers. Don't die, Mike. To me, it's about covering schools for our community. And in doing that, you hear a lot about data. Anybody can look at one set of data and come up with different conclusions. And that is one thing I have learned as a reporter, not just here in Jefferson County, but across the country. And, covering JCPS as long as I have in the past, this past year has been pretty rough. Started in August, started getting a lot of phone calls from parents and students and teachers and bus drivers and security guards and cafeteria managers, and pretty much anybody who wanted to call me did. And I worked with the school system and went to them and explained to them some of the things that I was hearing. And they have been very proactive. I will give the school system that. I feel that they have taken many of the concerns and they have vetted them. On the other hand, I have also heard concerns from people inside the schools that don't feel safe. My son rides a school bus to school every single day, to and from school. And as a member of this community, as a taxpayer, and as a reporter, I think it's important to make sure we look at both sides of every issue. And I try to do that in every one of my reports. And so my role here today is really just to help if you have any questions with data and things that I have reported on. And I have reported extensively on student behavior and discipline issues this year in Jefferson County. So any questions you have towards that, if I have the data, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about that. And with that, I will pass it along.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. At this point, and I also want to mention that we have a table here of representatives from Jefferson County Teachers Association. I understand they'll be around afterwards as well. In addition to folks from JCPS, I'm sure will be willing to take any questions that you may have at the conclusion of today's program. Thank you to our 6 speakers, and we have questions now that are going to be asked. Our first presenter, our first questioner is our board member, Pam Greenwell. Each speaker is reminded to keep your answers as succinct and short as possible so we can get in as many questions as possible. Ms. Greenwell, you have the floor.
I've got, am I on? I've got 2 questions on restorative practices, and I'd like to ask them both. The first says the JCPS Code of Conduct includes restorative practices. How are the restorative practices implemented in schools? Who is trained? How are they trained? How is it funded? And then I have a second question that says, with the abandonment of zero tolerance, JCPS referral and suspension numbers look better, but the same behaviors are still happening and often occur without consequences. Restorative justice practices were not properly rolled out, leading to troubled students receiving candy and an hour out of class before being sent back to class to disrupt the learning of others, so they can be sent back out to get candy again. I'd like some comments on the restorative practices.
First question was, how is it funded? We have just, I've sent in a recommendation. My department, the restorative practice director, will be sent in for a recommendation recognized at the board or accepted at the board. And that person will come with or begin working on training and bringing restorative practices to scale. With that comes support for training. With that comes a plan to roll that out throughout our schools. Again, we have 100+ schools, so that will take some time. So, and being succinct, I kind of hope that answers the question. As far as the other question, which I'm not sure what it was, can you repeat it? Oh yeah, it's about the candy.
Essentially, it was a comment on
Right.
how restorative practices are working, and I think maybe the best question to ask next might be, how many schools have implemented restorative practices?
There are some schools, I'll say this, there are some schools like TT Knight. They've done some things on their own. But as far as schools wide, it starts next year. We've put some stuff inside our Minor Daniels Academy, and we've worked with U of L on doing some of those things. But remember, the restorative practice director just gets hired a couple of weeks from now. I think one of the things we have to revisit is the path to restorative practice. We've talked about it, we've researched it, we went to other counties and looked at it. We started off small. Incremental is good in a big district like this. We have put some things in place around and it's in our code of conduct now. So as we move it forward, you will start to see certain schools get on board, and incrementally it will be addressed.
All right. Okay, please go ahead, Chuck.
Hello, time to go to work. Just to let the public and the community know that 2 years ago, I'm also from Chicago, and Angela Davis, who was one of the Chicago 7, her sister, Dr. Davis from Oakland, came to Louisville a little over 2 years ago and talked to JCTA about restorative justice. We got a very good ground level blueprint of that. Sadly, no one from JCPS was there. I would like to extend an invitation to JCPS to share what we learned, and if they need any resources from us or any contacts in order to explore the proper implementation of restorative justice, which isn't just another unfunded, unsupported mandate to the principals and teachers, that yes, it does take the whole community for it to work.
Very good. Next question, Tom Van Rosterstein.
This is directed to Dr. Marshall, but I guess it could be to any of the panelist members. This questioner had, I'm all for giving support and guidance for troubled students, but at what point or where do you draw the line? When do you take action and remove a student? If they are too harmful and disruptive to other well-behaved students, where would you draw that line specifically?
If they are too harmful and disruptive to other students. It was in the last part of that question.
The problem that JCPS has had with that particular question is that different teachers are describing different behaviors differently, and that is a problem. So what may merit a suspension at one school, and this is what I've been told and what I've experienced, will not merit one at another. So if a kid is constantly pushing somebody at one school, they may end up getting a suspension, whereas another school it's not. And so every 2 years they review their student code of conduct, and they're going through that process right now in terms of redefining what some of these behaviors are. And going back to the previous question on restorative practices, one of the problems that I have seen with it is that, particularly at Minor Daniels Academy, which is the new alternative school option here in Jefferson County, the majority of the teachers at Minor Daniels who were trained want out of Minor Daniels Academy. So I think that maybe going in, there wasn't a lot of buy-in for that particular program. And I don't know if it was because it was rolled out too quickly. I'm not sure what the circumstances are. But JCTA just did a survey earlier this year, and majority of the teachers that are at Minor Daniels Academy want to transfer out. So that's, you know, that's an issue that the district will have to eventually.
I would think, though, that restorative practices, and I could be wrong on this, but whenever you're trying to change the culture of a school, that takes time, does it not? And I don't know how much time we're talking about, but I want to give JCPS a chance to respond to that. Is it working, not working? How much time should we give it to work as a new way of thinking and teaching?
Well, and I think there's a misconception about restorative practices, that it's about letting students get away with things, and it's really not. It's about holding students accountable for their actions, but also being able to understand the impact that their actions have on others and being able to make up for that or restore that. So it's a very disciplined, accountable approach. But on the surface, some people think it's about letting students get away with things, and it is absolutely not about that. I don't know if you want to add anything, Dr. Marshall.
Pam?
What is a goal clarity coach? Is this a staff person? Are they at a specific school? And how much do they cost the district?
A goal clarity coach is, when I came to the district, there were resource teachers at Gaines, and it's important to put resources at schools where they can support teachers directly. So we put goal clarity coaches, one in every school, and Joe McKim is the goal clarity coach at Central High School. So it's about supporting all the teachers in the school and making sure there's a teacher supporting teachers.
What we're seeing in the schools, what a goal clarity coach's job has morphed into, at least at the elementary school level, is, unfortunately, and I know that might be another conversation at another time, but they are trying to manage and being inundated with the data concerning testing and the mandated testing that we have to give. Also, because of the discipline concerns that we're seeing in the schoolhouses that many of us feel are out of control and need to get fixed, they are being used as quasi-discipline people to answer the calls for students that are disruptive or out of control.
Next question, Tom.
This questioner asks, news reports say bus drivers don't make discipline referrals to try to get disruptive kids off buses because no action is taken. Why are disruptive bus riders allowed to remain on the buses? For any of the members of the panel.
Something we've done, we heard those complaints as well, and those were brought to us by the Teamsters who represent our bus drivers. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to document that disruptive behaviors were being addressed by school administration. So we've actually put in a accountability measure, which is doubly redundant. So when a bus driver has a referral, not only does the school get it, but the bus compound will get it as well. The bus compound forwards that referral on to our assistant superintendents who oversee principals, and then they keep a spreadsheet that documents this referral that then they can check on and see if it has gotten a consequence and what that consequence was. Removing a student from a bus is our last resort, because many times the students that you'd be removing from a bus, you're removing from school. And when we remove those students from school, we remove them from opportunity, and we remove them from opportunity, we have just added one more link in that chain that goes from poor behavior, poor discipline issues, punishment, punitive measures, into that chain that leads to incarceration down the road. Now, should we have high expectations for kids? Absolutely. But we should also work with those kids, work with their families to find solutions to make them successful on the bus. Sometimes we aren't going to find those solutions, but we're not going to make a knee-jerk reaction that could impact a student forever. But having said all that, I've let our drivers know, their supervisors, the assistant superintendents, and the principals, student safety, before anything else, is our #1 concern and #1 priority. And just like Mr. Marshall said, when someone's behavior gets to a point that it endangers themselves or others, we may have to take those drastic measures.
Before Chuck weighs in on this, we were talking about detention. There was an article in the New York Times about maybe 3 years ago. I'd like for Dr. Marshall to weigh in on this, if my facts are correct, and I think they are. The article alleged that detention and suspensions was actually a pipeline into the U.S. corrections. So over time, these young men who started off in detention in middle school, who were suspended repetitively, chose an alternate lifestyle, which ultimately became a pipeline into incarceration. Is that point in fact true? Would you like to share your thoughts on that article?
That is correct. One suspension increases the chances of a student dropping out. So 2 or 3 in the repetitive suspensions really heighten the, I won't say the opportunity, really heighten the probability of a student dropping out of school, and we know what that perpetuates inside of a city such as Louisville or any school district. So that is absolutely correct.
So your mission would be to keep the child in the classroom at all times, even though it poses disruption, and JCTA teachers are alleging that it takes away from instructional time. Is that why that's such an imperative?
Correct. We need to keep students in class, but students, we also want to make sure students are behaving.
I'm 110% in agreement that you've got to get and keep the kids into school. Unfortunately, what we've seen with bus referrals is that because in the past, I don't know if it's changed, but school building administrators, if they suspend a child off the bus and the child does not get to school, that counts against the building administrator's suspension rate, even though it's a bus referral. So what we have seen is that they've been reluctant to suspend a child off the bus in case they don't show up to school. That being said, what we've got, it seems like it's an either or. Dr. Razor's talked about how big our transportation business is, or our transportation department is. It seems we are in the transportation business. Is there alternative buses that we could use to perhaps teach correct bus behavior instead of an either-or approach? As far as as far as continuing to put students in who are disruptive back into the school, I can tell you from a teacher's perspective, it's very corrosive to the rest of the children that are in the classroom. You cannot effectively teach. 80% of your time goes into trying to manage the out-of-control child, and then the other children see those behaviors, and when the perception is nothing's being done about the behaviors, logical consequences or otherwise, then the other students start to pick up those behaviors as well.
Next question, Pam.
New teachers have to learn how to manage student behavior on the job. We are losing a large number of new teachers because they do not feel supported in their initial years. Administrators do not have the resources they need to provide the alternative education to teach them how to manage misbehaving students. How can JCPS support or retain new teachers while providing targeted help for the students?
And actually, that's a really important piece, is when I began teaching, I was told that it's about teaching students how to learn, but how to get along with people while you're doing it. So to have classroom management skills and the ability to teach behavior as well as teach academics is critically important. And we know that our youngest teachers need support and help with that. So we do have things in place. There are mentors in place. New teachers do have mentors, but we know that we need to do a lot more. And we have lots of great partnerships with universities here in Louisville, and we need to continue to work collaboratively with them so that teachers come with the skills they need to be able to address behavioral issues as well as academic issues. And the other important thing teachers are learning how to do is work in teams of teachers sharing expertise to solve problems. So those are things that constantly we need to work on.
What I said earlier is that it takes a community, is that I agree that teachers coming out of universities, I got my master's in 2003, so I'm fairly new. Classroom management is sadly neglected. And if this is the new reality that you are going to be the recipient or victim of verbal or physical assault, I believe that has to be brought up and made aware to people who are wanting to be teachers, that that is a reality, and that is something that you will have to learn to deal with and deal with quickly. Otherwise, you will lose the management of your classroom, and I think we can all agree is when you lose the classroom behavior, no learning takes place.
Chuck, you kind of hit on a sore point, I think, and kind of the elephant in the room. When you talk about disruptive behavior in the classroom and researching this topic, there's actually recorded incidents, and JCPS, correct me if I'm wrong, but of teachers being slapped, teachers being punched, and verbal assaults. And I just wonder fundamentally about the breakdown of the family unit. I don't want to simplify this, but at some point in time, parents, and I want to make sure when you record this, that parents have to make sure the kids are ready to learn when they come to school. Would you not agree with that? I mean, at some point, there is a breakdown here, but the question is, how does the school address that, and how does a kid have the temerity to strike his teacher? That's a serious problem. That's assault.
Based on being in special ed for 11 years, including 4 years of EBD self-contained, which is emotional behavior disability self-contained unit, as well as being 12 years certified in safe crisis management, children will continue, discipline does not mean punishment. Children will continue to, at home or at school, continue to push the boundaries until they find where the boundaries are at. If there are no boundaries given or enforced to the child as a disciplinary, not punitive measure, they're going to keep escalating their behavior until they find it.
Dale, can I speak to that? I'm a chief operations officer right now, but about 6 years ago, I was principal of a high-poverty urban middle school. And at my high-poverty urban middle school, like here in JCPS, a lot of the kids, the majority of the kids, didn't look like me, didn't live in a neighborhood like mine, didn't have the experiences that I'd have, and it's why as was mentioned earlier, the comment, "Didn't your parents raise you better?" are fighting words. And something Dr. Marshall talks about a lot, something we need to do a better job of, we're about transparency, is cultural competency, and as I alluded to earlier, relationship building. In my high poverty, I had this conversation today. In my high poverty urban middle school, I piloted one year teams of kids moving around throughout the entire day in the same group. So the first period math class was the second period English class and the third period science class. Those kids stayed together all day long. And I did it sort of as a test, because I did it with a group of kids that a lot of people would have, quote unquote, called the worst kids in that grade. Well, they'd go to Miss Anderson's class, and Miss Anderson's class would average about 3 or 4 referrals a day. They'd go to Miss Jones' class, and Miss Jones' class 3 or 4 or 5 referrals a day. They'd go to Mr. Johnson's class, and Mr. Johnson gave me 4 referrals all year long. He wasn't letting the kids get away with murder. He was teaching, but he was relating with the kids. And the other thing he was doing is he was making it relevant to them. He was adhering to this huge paradigm shift that we're having in education today. And there's 2 ways to look at it. We can like it, or we can not like it, but it's the way it is. It'd be easy for me to say, well, I taught them and they didn't learn. But that's not going to fix our society. That's definitely not going to help our economy. Or we can say, I taught it, they didn't learn. Maybe I need to take a new approach. Now, what that entailed and looked like in my building was lots of systems, lots of structures. It's actually how I ended up an operations officer. Lots of protocols, lots of clear expectations. Because you can't assume, and I say this about all kids, but especially at-risk children of poverty, you can't assume they already know. And when I mean can't assume they already know, you can't assume they already know they're supposed to sit down on the bus. You can't assume they already know that most of us walk down the right side of the hallway. So the highway department doesn't leave that to chance. They put a line right down the middle of the road, so we know which side to stay on. I put a line down the middle of my hallways, and fights decreased by 50% the first week. So it's those type of things, and it's uncomfortable to change, and education over the years hasn't been willing to make a big change like that really quickly, but that's the direction we're moving in, and it's painful.
Do we have another question teed up? If not, we have one up here, but go ahead, Tom.
How many, this question is, how many attacks on teachers, bus drivers, and support staff have there been in the last 1 to 3 years?
I will try to answer that in terms of the number of referrals. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this microphone, but so let me look at my data here. Typically, is it working? I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. So typically, JCPS has, does somebody not want to hear the data? 45,000 behavior referrals a year, 45,000. This is data given by Dina Dossett 2 weeks ago at a student code of behavior. 83% are for minor infractions, 16% are for aggression, 1% are for law violations. As I mentioned earlier, the problem is how one defines a behavior is different from one building to the next. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Sorry. So we've had a lot, there's a lot of behavior referrals, and whether teachers are being encouraged to write the referrals or not is up for debate, because you'll hear in a building they're afraid that they're going to get retaliated against, or my numbers are going to go up and therefore my school's going to look bad. Or you name it, I've heard it. I think one thing that is important to remember about this Louisville community and the children that are in this community, and I've seen it firsthand because I've spent a lot of times in the school, is that there's a lot of children in this community that go without. And I think a lot of times people in Louisville forget that. We have teachers and principals that are dealing with kids that come to school who haven't eaten on a Monday in 3 days. It happens. I've seen it happen. You've got kids that come to school with head lice because they haven't washed their hair. And JCPS, they can't tell you these stories, but I've seen them. And there's just a lot of societal issues that are going on within JCPS right now. And I've seen it, and I try to tell those stories as best as I can, being a reporter. But I just really encourage you to look at the kids that are in this community and where they're coming from. Many of them are coming from, I'm a single parent homes, that parents work 2 jobs. There's not a bus line to get to their child's school to participate. I participate because I make time for it, but a lot of people don't work hours that they can do that. I hear that from parents all the time. I wish I could volunteer at my child's school, but I can't get there, or these events are happening when I can't get there. So it's just, you got to look at the community and really have an accurate picture of the children and, what is the alternative in terms of you don't want them, where are they going to go if you kick them out of school?
Tony.
And that's an important point.
Tony, before Chuck weighs in, I wanted JCPS to respond to a survey, because I've also seen you talk about data and you talk about numbers. I've also read surveys on Dear JCPS, and I'm kind of confused in the last 5 minutes that we have, that there was a blind survey conducted by JCPS with results showing that 92% of certified staff, including teachers and principals, agree or strongly agree with the statement, "I feel safe and secure at my workplace." In addition, 91.5% in the same blind survey agree or strongly agree with the statement, "I feel safe outside the building before and after work." So the question is, where's the disconnect between the surveys that you guys are doing and the surveys that you guys are doing? Gay, we have not heard from you, so please.
Okay. The disconnect is that teachers are afraid to give honest feedback when the information that they're providing is going through district-controlled channels. So when the district performs a survey, the teachers are not always being completely honest. And then when JCTA performs a survey, you get a completely different set of answers because there's no risk that those answers are going to come back to bite the teacher. So we are finding that there is a huge disconnect in data, and we encourage the administrators to spend time on the grounds, actually in the building, not getting handheld dog and pony show tours, but actually talking to the teachers and asking them and making it safe for them to give honest answers. And we actually are doing a Shadow a Student Day during the week of February 29th is National Shadow a Student Day, and we've invited all of our board members and our administrators to shadow a student. And some of the responses that we're getting are that, oh, we did it a couple of years ago and it was very helpful and very insightful. Well, you know what? The environment has changed in just the last 12 months. We were talking about restorative justice. In addition to restorative justice, there's a program called PBIS, which is in most of the schools, which is similar in regards to they take the students out of the class, try to modify the behavior, and that's a term that concerned me as well. We don't want to modify behavior so much as we want to identify what's going on with that child and make sure that need is being addressed. Because if they're acting out because they can't do the work, we take them out in the hallway, we have a conversation with them, we send them right back into the classroom, they're going to continue to disrupt the class. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution that can be dictated from above and say this is how you solve this problem and everybody must do it this way. We have to empower our teachers and our staff to do their jobs, trust them to know how to handle the situations that arise as they arise, and differentiate. Just like they differentiate instruction, they need to be able to have the power to differentiate behavior and discipline so that they can suspend a child if they need to, or take them out in the hall and have that conversation and send them back to the classroom. It could be that the child hasn't eaten and they can address that need and put them back in the classroom. But if they're misbehaving because they can't do the work, then they need to find a different way to address that situation, because if they just put them back in the classroom, that takes power away from the teacher,
Okay.
and we need to make sure that we're not disempowering our teachers.
Very good. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to let Mike Razor weigh in, and then Chuck will give you the last word. Dr. Razor.
There are two factors that I really think we need to look at when we look at surveys. And I'll put my statistician's hat on here for a second. You heard Dale describe a double-blind survey with a very, very, very large survey size of participants. Now, you'll find on blogs, I don't know how many happy people go on blogs and look for unhappy topics. Also, when a union would do a survey about school safety, many times the people who would fill that out would be people who were concerned about it. Now, I'm not saying that to minimize anybody's concerns. That's the second part. Context is so important. In a district our size, 1,000 people isn't a high percentage, but it's still 1,000 people that don't feel safe. 1,000 kids isn't a high percentage, but it's 1,000 kids that are at risk or putting other kids at risk if that's the number. So, like I said, two quick sides to this. One, I do believe that 90% of people feel safe at school. At the same time, that 10% is a large number. And that's something that we need to look at, just like those kids that were misbehaving on buses. Try to find out who those people are and name and claim their concerns and what's causing that, whether it's needing training, needing support, or just needing somebody to listen to them.
Very good. Chuck, last word.
Thank you. First of all, I agree with Dr. Razor 110% that you have to build relationships as a teacher in order to help to get more positive behaviors out of every student in your class. Unfortunately, we can sit up here on the 25th floor of the Galt House. We've got 3 doctors, the 3 of the most important people at JCPS. When it gets distilled down to our level, there's 2 different sets of organizations at JCPS. There's the teachers, and then there's what is known as, quote unquote, as the district. When it gets percolated down from these 3 doctors, it ends up that, you know how you build relationship as a teacher? You need to care more. You. Secondly, as far as statistics, what they say, you know, lies, damn lies, and statistics. JCPS has theirs, JCTA has ours too. What concerns me about JCPS is that it seems that we talk more about statistics than humans. I know that that is not their intent, but it seems obvious, or I shouldn't say it seems obvious, it seems that people in the media, and as well as the public, sees this as a data and statistic game. We want to talk about each individual child. We believe they have the right to learn, maximize their potential, not only in education, but as human beings as well.
Very good. I'd like to say on behalf of the Louisville Forum, I'd like to thank Dr. Hargens, Dr. Rayner, Dr. Marshall, Chuck Bird, Gay Adelman, and Tony Kahns for sharing your insights as part of this dinner discussion of public school safety concerns and solutions. I encourage anyone interested in joining the Louisville Forum. I know you're all like, well, how do I join after such a stimulating program? Or maybe your leg went to sleep, you just leaned forward. But we're going to say you want to become a member. And how you do that is you see Pam Greenwell, or you can also go to our website, which is louisvilleforum.org for more information. Next month, we resume our monthly luncheon series. We'll be back at Vincenzo's on Wednesday, March the 19th with another stimulating topic. If you enjoyed tonight's dinner, please make time to see us at lunch, and we'll continue this conversation. On behalf of the Louisville Forum, be safe going home. See you next year. Thank you very much.